Welcome to New Hampshire Politics with John Burt. I'm John Burt. I want to thank you for joining me today. And today we have a real exciting guest. I know you're going to enjoy this talk that we're going to have. Matter of fact, it's Peter. I got to say it right because I am terrible. Yeah, everybody knows on TV how bad I am with names. Peter Bearse. Is that
Peter Bearse.
Bearse. Why did I say Bearse? Bearse.
It's all right. People
Peter Bearse.
do a job on the name.
I was going to say, and you're an economist?
That's right.
Yeah, and a writer.
A devotee of the dismal science, as they say.
Well, and a writer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and a political activist.
Oh, yeah. I get into trouble all kinds of ways.
Well, I think that's the side I like about you, Peter. I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm really so happy to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on.
We'll try to have an exciting discussion that will interest the folks out there, too. Too bad you don't have a call-in.
Well, I think we're working on that.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah, we're going to work on that. Right now we can do Skype. I'm all excited about that. I've done it, I think, once, but we need to do it some
You
more.
may be in training to be another Rush.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm working for. Well, let's talk a little bit about yourself. If you want to introduce yourself, who you are, that way the audience knows,
Well, we want to get into some real important questions and concerns. In a nutshell, I'm older than I look. My next birthday in May, next month, I'll be 73.
Really? Yeah.
And so I fool a lot of people with that way. But, I have the last laugh. I always look young for my age, and now it's an advantage,
Yeah.
And, I'm an economist. I've had my own business for over 20 years, and economic consulting business, and I've served in state and local government, both elected and appointed positions.
Yeah.
In 2 or 3 different states, and here I am.
So what got you to New Hampshire?
Oh, what else? I mean, well, I'll tell you, first of all, you get a kick out of this. I mean, I came to New Hampshire from Massachusetts, where I grew up in Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
No, and anyway, I learned some things. That's a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
And anyway, I came to New Hampshire because in Massachusetts, as a conservative, I felt like I was a member of an endangered species. Now, that's one reason for coming to New Hampshire. The other is that New Hampshire is more affordable. I wanted to look for a little, as I was looking ahead to retirement at that time, I wanted to look for a little lower cost of living.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah.
Trouble is we had too many damn people in Massachusetts who are liberals come follow me over,
Yes, yeah, we should have closed the bridge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because they want to bring their ways.
We also used to say that in Gloucester because Gloucester is an island, and we used to say we got to raise the bridge. Too many tourists coming, or whatnot.
Yeah. No, and they leave, probably for the same reasons. They love New Hampshire and they like our ways up here, but then they bring their ways with us.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how we can get away from that.
We got to wean them away from their bad habits. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down a few questions, and the first one is, since most of the towns that support constitutional amendments to get, the big money out of politics is the Republican, bill.
Yes.
And it
Thank you.
Yeah, it came out of the Senate as Senate Bill 307.
Right.
So if somebody wants to look it up, they can look it up. Senate Bill 307. I want to talk a little bit about that because right now it's in the House.
Right.
Switchovers happened.
We're hoping that an amendment, which Jeb Bradley didn't favor, but was left out of the final wording, so we'd like to have that slight amendment before the House votes on it. Because Jeb left out the word constitutional amendment, which is critical to the whole bill.
Yes. Yeah.
That we somehow put New Hampshire as a state in the position of supporting at least one constitutional amendment that will help to get big money out of politics, which is, poisoning the well.
Yes. Yeah. But didn't the Supreme Court 5-4 ruling just rule something? What a couple weeks ago?
Adding insult to injury from Chicago United.
Yeah.
In the area of this thing I mentioned, getting big money out of politics, it opens the floodgates even more.
Yeah, because I think the Supreme Court just says, an individual can give whatever.
No, that's not true. The individual limits still pertain. What
does.
doesn't pertain, where the floodgates have been opened further, is on aggregate contributions to parties or PACs
Oh.
or any number of state rep campaigns. I mean, federal representative, U.S. representative campaigns.
Yeah.
Because these bills, Chicago United, anything decided by the Supreme Court only pertains to federal elections, you know,
Okay.
except for violations of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that wasn't good that they did this.
So I mean, you can have, if you're wealthy, and you know, there's a lot more wealthy people around these days, you know, you can contribute an unlimited amount to a party, to a PAC,
Yeah.
or you could buy the whole Congress. Literally. I mean,
So, you know, so the what is it? The Koch brothers down in Texas, is that what? Or the unions? You know, for
well,
the
multiply
Democrat side?
435 by 2,600, and you'll see what the upper limit is. Because at the individual level, the 2,600 still pertains.
It does. Okay.
But you can multiply that. You know, you can multiply that
Yeah.
to give money all over the country to people running for Congress.
Oh, so it's okay. I see how that's going to.
Any number of candidates.
Yeah. And it's, you know, as long as
Yeah.
you stay at the 26 per,
Right. Yeah,
you're golden.
that's right.
Wow.
But if you have a PAC, you know, then there's no limit to that. And you know that in the Congress, this is one reason why I say in my most recent book, Congress is really corrupt.
Yes. Yeah,
And
it is.
we can talk about it if you like. There's things that other people don't even know to back that up. But, you know, people's representation is being stolen from them because of the incredibly rising cost of campaigns. And from day one, as soon as you're elected to Congress, you've got to start raising money for re-election.
Yeah.
And not only that, your party, if you're in a major party, Republican or Democratic, either party national committee will come up to you in your office on day one and say, look, guy or gal, you got to raise $100,000 for the party. And if you don't do that, you're screwed. You won't get your committee choices. You'll be back of the line for advancement in the Congress.
Yeah.
You know, it's serious. And they give you who to call, and who to call, of course, are the big money boys, you know, the big corporations and all.
And how do you sway them?
Well, they know that they're going to be called, and they would like to create an obligation there that they've
Yeah.
contributed to raise your first $100,000 for the party.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the game gets biased from day one.
Now the problem is both parties is going to call the same person, and he's going to write 2 checks.
Well, many of them do, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless there's a strong majority one way or the other in which they'll favor the majority party.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, anyway, we could tell stories on this till the cows come home.
Yeah.
I didn't see any cows in the schoolyard.
No, not yet. Well, there's now. How do you think So it came out of the House, this Senate Bill 307. It came out of the Senate. I mean.
Yes, right.
You know, favorable.
And Russ Prescott's committee, we had a hearing for that committee. I testified, among others.
It doesn't say who the vote was. Oh, it does say 23 yeses and 1 no. Wow, that's a good
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah,
That's a
but
real good vote.
the wording was somewhat compromised by Jeb Bradley tossing an amendment which weakened the language.
Yeah. Now, how do you think it's going to do in the House then?
And given the polls, which you may know, I mean, 71% of a recent poll of the New Hampshire population, or, you know, this good sample, says they don't favor Chicago United. That was the earlier Supreme Court decision.
Yeah.
And so you're probably going to have a rise in that 71%, and 68% would like to see some constitutional amendment.
Yeah. Well, I received, as a state representative, I received a lot of calls.
And as a Republican, I was very happy to see the support coming from Republicans on this. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it can work. Now, there is another bill, House Bill 480, that I wanted to touch base, and it was about, you know, it's in criminal justice.
Right.
Yeah, if you want to explain a little bit what that bill does, you know, and how's that going to, you know, work for, you know, criminal justice reform.
Well, The bill, which I drafted, and then at the end I had a little assistance from the ACLU to add a portion to it, is one that really would place limits on the application of what I consider to be the arbitrary application of solitary confinement to inmates that are basically guilty of no more than in-house prison infractions. I'll give you one example. I mean, I've tried to help a few inmates, so I do have a personal view on this, if you don't mind.
No, please.
You know, there's and so many of the prisoners in there have mental health issues. Now, this one has at least 3 certified mental health issues.
Yeah.
And he was pleading with the medical administration to adjust his meds. Because if you suffer depression, often you suffer real pain. And so to assuage that pain, he got, like many people do, whether they feel pain or not, got a little a weed to smoke, you know.
Yeah.
To put him more at ease. And then he gets a urine test, and he gets thrown in the SHU unit, the solitary housing unit.
Yeah.
For just that offense, which, given the fact at the same time the legislature was trying to legalize medical marijuana, is a real kick in the teeth. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, it's really not. I don't think it should be justified at all for somebody who has mental health issues to be subject to solitary confinement.
I agree.
At least not without a hearing of a full panel, which includes a medical officer.
Yeah.
And then only for a very limited time. And he was thrown in the SHU for 6 months. And that's not the only example.
Wow,
I can
6 months.
I can quote others. Yeah.
And did they still give him his medicine, or did they stop?
Yeah,
it?
he got his medicine. Eventually, they just adjust the meds, but not, only after months of pleading.
Yeah, no, we really need to fix that issue.
And here I can't help but say this, because it's so true. You know, Mississippi has gone through a reform of their way of handling solitary confinement. You know, it's supposed to be for the worst of the worst, but here we're talking about long-term solitary confinement for just in-house infractions of in-prison rules. We're not talking about violent crime.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
And Mississippi reformed their treatment of solitary.
Wow.
And they dig it. Mississippi, that state which we often malign for being way down south and, backward yo-hos,
Yeah, exactly.
They're better on this than New Hampshire. Okay?
And I mean, it must lower cost. Wouldn't we save money by reforming?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
So why?
There's a lot of variation across states, but on the average, across states in the United States, to put somebody in solitary confinement costs 3 times as much per prisoner as it does just to have them in the general population. Now, it's already over $35,000 per head.
Wow.
So we're not talking chopped liver here.
It costs that much.
You, the
to throw 'em down
taxpayer,
there.
should be concerned about this.
Yeah.
Because you're paying the bill.
That's huge. And
Now, I don't know what the ratio is exactly for New Hampshire, but I could easily compute it from the Department of Corrections annual reports. I've got a series of those in my computer.
Yeah. Now, I did see where by a voice vote, so you don't know who voted for, but in the House, it's not this bill. The House Bill 480 isn't going to go to the Senate this year.
No, it was ITL'd by the committee, and I couldn't believe it. I've got to pick up with our mutual friend Warden Mark.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, he was one of those who voted to ITL it. And I ran into him at one of the Libertarian fish fry this last summer, and I really wanted to pick on him, but I didn't have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's a good representative here in Goffstown.
He is. He'll always be a friend of mine.
Yeah. So I'm wondering,
But I feel the committee was misinformed by the commissioner, and they do tend to go along with the leadership unless there's something really egregious.
Yeah.
But I think there's some things going on here which are egregious because it's just the arbitrary application of in-house power of the guards and the warden.
Yes.
Instead of having any sensitivity to the fact that a large portion of your inmates in the state prison system at least on the male side, and I think it's also probably true somewhat on the female side, are they either suffer from drug issues or mental health issues
Yep.
or alcohol issues.
Absolutely.
And they're not getting any treatment,
Yep.
but they're being sent to the SHU if they smoke a little dope to relieve their pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't get-
Well, one thing that you said that I really liked was that, and I think this is sad. You said that the committees rely too much on, the government figurehead,
Yeah,
basically.
right.
When I sat on municipal, I'm on Fish and Game this term, but my first term I sat on municipal county government. And, the LGC, the Local Government Center, and the New Hampshire Municipal Association, those
Sure.
figureheads would come in, oh, this is good for the people. And unfortunately, most of the committee would vote on it. Well, then everybody's complaining, oh my God, our taxes are going up. Well, it's because, you're letting the fox watch the hen house door.
Exactly. There was a whole issue around that LGC.
Oh yeah, it's huge problems,
Yeah,
and we need to take care of that. at
But
some
here,
point.
let me quickly point out this, if anything, there's a far greater problem with the state prison system.
There is.
There's too little oversight.
Yeah.
There's hardly any accountability.
Yeah.
And there's no transparency. It's a very closed system. We have a closed system without transparency and accountability. Anything can go wrong. And I'll say it straight out, I consider the state prison in Concord to be a lawless institution.
Yeah.
Because the administration of the in-house rules is more arbitrary than not.
Well, and I think our other problem that we have is we have an AG's office that only has a justified stamp. They do not have an unjustified stamp. I mean, anything happens, corruption, and it's very rare. We have a lot of good policemen, but I mean, when we get one that goes bad, the AG's office, justified, and I'm going, what do you mean justified?
Yeah, right.
He needs to be disciplined.
Well, you've talked to Ed Nail, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's the junkyard dog of the state on voter fraud.
Oh
And the AG's office pays no attention to the evidence he brings to them.
yeah, yeah. Well, the Senator Martha Fuller Clark, she had her halfway house there. Joe Biden's niece, I think she's from D.C. if I remember, or Virginia, spends a night there.
Oh, it's hilarious.
And then she votes the next day, and there's the New Hampshire AG's office. Justified. I'm going, are you serious? And I guess, the halfway house, she had eight people from all over the country in there. And I'm just looking, going.
It wasn't for Ed, all this kind of stuff we shoveled under the rug.
Oh, it would, yeah. Ed's really good. I got to get him in here someday.
Oh, yeah.
He's
you
a good
really
one.
do, yeah.
Well, we'll move on. But the other question I had is, and this is hopefully you'll touch base on this, is as a rule, why do conservatives deny climate change and any responsibility for its
God,
consequences?
John, I've been wondering about that for years.
Yeah.
And I've come down to the point where I say, you know what? No, guys, and I've said this publicly, as well as written a little bit. And, guys, and I'm talking to fellow Republicans, time to stop fighting over what is the cause. You can see climate change with your own eyes. You can see it happening around the country. You can see it happening in your backyard if you just look
Yes.
a little bit, okay? Yeah. So let's not deny climate change. Let's emphasize the good old Republican tried and true concept of responsibility. Who's going to take responsibility for the consequences of something which has become increasingly damaging
Yeah.
to families and communities?
Yeah.
So, look, I'll use that phrase, the cows come home. We can argue till the cows come home about what are the causes of climate change, but you can't deny that it's happening. So what the hell are you going to do about it?
Yeah. And we should look at it.
That's the question.
But right now they're saying up north, in the Arctic, we got the most snow ever. Some of the areas, a lot of ice. But then what do we do with China? That's
Yeah, but you also got the strong evidence, which is directly related to climate change, is the warming of the oceans and the increasing acidity of the oceans, both of which have major consequences for climate and as well as things like the coral reefs, like the grand reef off of Australia is dying.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, but what do we do with China? They're putting a coal burning plant, and they aren't clean like we have here in Bow. which I heard Bo is one of the cleanest in the country.
Okay, well, tell you what's happening in China, though, and this shows you how much easier it is to make decisions in a totalitarian system. The government has said, we're going to have like the Chinese counterpart, not exactly the same, it's Chinese counterpart of what was called cap and trade here. So that they're attaching a price to carbon, and anyone who's discharging carbon is going to have to pay the price.
Mm.
It's like if we had a carbon tax here.
Yeah.
But it's easier to do that in a system which is not democratic,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think we can avoid responsibility. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tough world.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Now
And look, give me your views on this. I mean, you raised the question. You're a Republican leader.
I am.
Am I off the beam here?
Well, on climate change, I look at it, I don't think we're doing it. I think it has been going on for millions of years.
Yes.
And from what I'm hearing, the ice has returned in a vengeance up in the Arctic, and it's just it's the way the cycle happens. I remember in the 70s, I was
this
in
happened,
high school.
I'll interrupt for a minute. I'm sorry. You're a great guy, but I can't help but interrupt quickly to mention the Black Death of the late Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance.
Yep.
That caused climate change. Why? Because so many people died. They were using less. They're chopping down less trees, and burning them for fuel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sure, there's been these long cycles, and at some point, which we won't live to see, that we'll have another ice age.
Oh, absolutely.
But in the meantime, if you go back and you say that, thousands of years ago, that happened, and so we don't have to really worry about it now. It's just to disavow responsibility, because in those days, people died by the thousands, and there was no media to broadcast it.
Yes.
And there was no democratic government to talk about it.
Yeah.
And there was too little sensitivity for human life, even now in many countries.
There is, yep.
But we can't say that about our own country. So again, the question still stands,
Well, I believe in being a good steward of our own properties.
Right.
We need to take care of it. Now, do we need to, have the water so pure that we could drink any water in the country? We can't do it. Not at a cost that's going to bankrupt us. And that's what the federal government is going toward.
Well, in California, they're recycling dirty water. I'm sure. I mean, and also we'll have to rely more on desalination.
Yeah.
No, we don't need to drink pure water, but that's just part of the issue. And
but I think that's where some people want us to thrive for. They want pure, where we've never had it.
okay, but John, I want to go back to your original question, because that really is the key question.
Yeah.
Why are Republicans so averse to dealing with this issue? Whether you call it global warming or climate change, why are they so averse? Now, I can give you my guesses, because I have thought about this long and hard. And I feel that it's partly an ideological thing, because when you mention global warming and climate change, the Republicans, the first thing he thinks of is big government.
Yes.
Here's a liberal talking to me about global warming, and he favors big government. He wants big government to get involved to solve this problem. Yeah. Well, I'm a Republican, and that's not my approach. Yeah. I've thought for years that there are things we can do as individuals and as families and communities that can give us a good handle on this.
Yes.
And take real responsibility where it belongs, which is in our individual selves and the families and communities. But the problem is, if the longer we keep our heads in the sand and ignore the fact that we have to take some responsibility for what's going on, the more you favor big government in doing that, because you're not taking the little steps that would avoid so much of the problem. And so that's going to leave you with perhaps I won't say I'm not one of these catastrophic people,
Yes.
But to the extent you avoid a problem, you hand more power to big government at the time where there is a crisis, and that's who people turn to.
Well, and that's what we shouldn't be doing.
I know.
because big government is not the answer.
It's not the answer. I agree with you.
I mean, look at poor PSNH, as I call them, poor PSNH.
Right.
Our legislators, luckily not me, but years past, forced them to put, what was it, $400 million or $300 million in that Bowl plant they have that burns coal.
Right.
It's the cleanest burning coal plant in the country, from what I understand. Now
There's a lot of work going on clean coal, so coal has to be part of the picture.
Yes, but then PUC, just before the taping of this show, says now they have to sell off their assets. Some of them. And I'm going, all right, so you force them to do something, and now you want them to sell it. You know, it doesn't make any sense. You know, that's where government is going wrong.
Well, there was a headline, I think it was in the Union Leader just today or yesterday, I'm not sure which, said, you referred to this, what you're talking about, and said that the taxpayer or the ratepayers are going to end up paying the cost.
But why didn't they see that when they forced the Public Service of New Hampshire to do that anyways?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I mean, no corporation's going to pay the cost. We always pass it on to the consumer.
But then if they can, they'll pass it on to consumers, customers.
Yes, yeah.
But you know, this is definitely an illustration of what's wrong with the politics of the day. And
yes,
I say to people over and over, you know, you're not going to have a better government if you don't have a better politics, so get involved.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the symptoms you're pointing to is short-termitis.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have a longer range view of what's going on here, you're going to get defeated by the problem because you don't take little steps to deal with it, and then the little steps become giant steps.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah. Well, we'll take a small break, and we'll be right back.
Were we getting the high sign over there?
No, not yet. But I see the clock ticking away, and we'll be right back in just in a couple minutes.
That's what happens when you get into some really challenging issues. You know, it's like chasing bunnies through the bush. You know.
Absolutely. Well, welcome back, and we're talking with Peter Bearse, and he's an economist, a writer, and a political activist, and I like the political activist side more.
By the way, I was saying to John before we started, it's Bearse like in hearse because we're under a great undertaking.
Yes, we are.
That's just an example of my corny humor. I should grow corn in my garden. But John, you're the leader of the pack here.
Well, I got a couple hot topics I think is going to hopefully set you afire, because I'm curious where you stand on them. And one is the death penalty, because the House did pass the repeal of it, even though I did vote against that. Mm-hmm. And then on gay marriage, you know, where and why, and you know, how do you feel on that?
Which one do you want to take first?
Well, let's touch base on the death penalty, because that's
sure.
You know, that's going to the Senate right now as we speak.
Look, I was one of the founders of Citizens for Criminal Justice Reform, a group I'd like to recommend to all the folks out there, because it is a real citizens group. It's a 501c3. It has tax-exempt status, and it's well-led, and we had our annual meeting just a couple of weeks ago. But, you know, so I don't come to this question as just an ingenue or somebody who hasn't given consideration to this and other criminal justice issues.
Yes.
And I just want to ask a simple question to begin answering it. Do you feel you can play God?
No.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
But actually providing the death penalty, no matter how strong the seeming evidence, and part of the problem is that we've had so many convictions overturned because of sloppy trials, because evidence withheld,
yes,
procedural problems, etc. But putting that aside, which is another set of reasons for opposing the death penalty, because There has been, we don't know how many innocent people have been put to death, but they're a significant number, whatever the count.
Yes.
Because now with the introduction of DNA, for example, some convictions have been overturned on that basis. Be that as it may, I don't like to play God. And I say to my Republican friends, and you're one of them, and I say actually to anyone, the death penalty is actually, ironically, dig this, the easy way out.
That's the argument, it is.
Because
I agree. Yep.
I favor actually the sentence should be not just life in prison, but life in prison at hard labor. Yeah. You know, in the old days, in the beginning of prisons, the Quakers set up jails as penitentiaries because they wanted to provide a setting in which people could meditate on their sins, their crimes, and become penitent. That's the origin of penitentiary.
Oh, all right.
Be that as it may, if you kill somebody, you may never find out the real cause of what happened. You know, whereas if he stays alive, or at least for a while, even under hard labor, you know, he's certainly going to think about his crimes.
Yeah.
And you can have people come in to, you know, do studies of people who committed crimes, or do a combination of study and counseling to actually get to the bottom of what happened and why. And those provide lessons that are essential to avoiding people dying from murder in the future.
Yeah.
And you don't get the lessons if you kill the lessons. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I'll touch base a little bit on it. And now, there is a big part of me that thinks we should get rid of it. Matter of fact, it's probably more than 50%.
I'm not a bleeding heart on this. I think you can tell.
Well, that's it. You know, because I agree. You know, just throw them in jail. It's cheaper for one. You know, luckily this is a nonpartisan issue.
Yep.
Even though it passed the House overwhelmingly. And the reason I voted against it is because I look at like the Kimberly Gates. Is it Gates down in Mount Vernon? Mm-hmm. Yeah, down there, or Addison, the officer that was,
right.
you know,
right.
You know, I look at those cases.
But there was only one person on death row, and that's Mike Addison.
It is, yeah. But for killing the
and the bill didn't include him. I mean,
well, that's true, and I got up on the House floor and argued with that.
Mm-hmm. He'll still be on death row.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Well, no, but Representative Valancourt wanted to take him out of the equation, saying, you know, if you really are going to pass this, which is true, absolutely true. Mm-hmm. If you're going to pass the House, the death penalty to repeal it, Addison needs to be part of that equation because you can't be putting somebody to death and repeal it at the same time. So that's what I looked at, but I did get up.
But he was convicted under an old law. I mean,
yeah. Well, I got up there and argued with Representative Valancourt and saying, you know, what he did was, you know, so when there's zero questions in the juror's mind, you know, I don't know. I just look at it.
No, you can't ignore the view of the victims. I'm sorry that I appeared to do that, but you know, you can't allow a will to vengeance prevail. Yeah. When there's greater values, there's no greater value than human life. Human life, I think, is sacred. But nevertheless, you want to have more of a preventative attitude. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah.
And you also want genuine punishment. Putting somebody, if somebody kills, they have a low value for human life, including their own.
Yeah.
So why take the easy way out?
Yeah. Well, I was surprised, and I'll be honest, I really was surprised. During testimony of the House hearing, they had people that were victims, their parents or their sister was murdered, and they said they're against the death penalty.
And all you can do is cry with them.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
I mean,
so I was kind of
heartbreaking tales.
Oh, it is. So that's a touchy one, and you know, I just look at it, but you know, it's going to go to the Senate. I don't know what the Senate will do.
And look at the example of the two firemen who died in the line of duty. I mean, they're heroes, but still, the disruption to families of the loss of a major breadwinner is so serious.
Yeah, it is. And now, how you know, where are you on the gay marriage of the state?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, John. I really am, because I really feel that we can't accept the byline of the liberal media that now the issue has been decided, and you know, more and more people are coming on board. A majority of the people are now tending to favor gay marriage. I think that's just so much bullshit, if you don't mind. He can bleep me out if he wants. And I'll tell you why, because I've thought long and hard about this issue, and I hate to confess this, but I have been divorced twice.
Yeah.
Actually, it's, anyway. But I have come, partly because of my hard experience, I come to value marriage all the more.
Yes.
Because I know, I can recognize now the mistakes that I made. And I do think marriage is sacred. But beyond that, what we've done in this issue is we've let the opposition, that is the out-and-out, flat-headed, I'm sorry, I shouldn't insult them. I don't like to pin labels. We let the opponents on this, primarily liberals, use the civil rights movement as a model of what they're up to, and we've let them cast the issue in terms of civil rights. And we made the mistake very early, and we've never been able to get away from it.
Yeah.
It's not a civil rights issue. We're talking about an institution which is thousands of years old. And we're talking, and liberals, I say this without trying to insult anyone, like to also play in the word choice. We have a choice to abort a child.
Yes.
We have a choice to marry whoever we want. That's a terrible misuse of the word choice, because as any economist knows, like myself, who goes back to Adam Smith and rereads The Wealth of Nations and also his Theory of Moral Sentiments, which is also a great book, that a market system, for example, it only behaves well, it only succeeds, it's only productive in the setting of basic values which are honored. Well, the same thing happens in every other area of human concern. If you lose the sense of basic values, you've made a serious mistake in describing this as a matter of choice, because it's not.
Yeah.
Not just a matter of individual choice. It's a matter of what community values prevail. And by the way, this is not a federal issue. It's another thing that's gone wrong. It's become a federal issue because of the Supreme Court's intervention. But actually, there's nothing in the Constitution that indicates that this should be an issue at all at the federal level. It's basically a state and local issue.
Yeah.
So of course you can have variations among states. That's the way our system is supposed to work. And the other, and basically, I want to go back to the short-termitis. This is also an example of a fad. It's become a fad to be for gay marriage. But the fundamentals on this issue go back to the nature of evolution. Why do we have sex? I don't mean the act of sex. Why as there's distinctions, sexual distinctions? It's so that we can have children who are better adapted to succeed in the battles of life. And you can't have and marriage is fundamentally for raising children. Not only, but fundamentally.
Yes. Yeah.
And where's the evidence being pointed to about how children suffer from the lack of the father or a mother in the home? If there's just one parent. No question they've made great sacrifices made by single parents of either sex. But those are stories which also proceed on the basis of a marriage which involve the other.
Yeah, it's huge damage to a child.
So at least there's a story to tell about your father or your mother who died prematurely. So if you take the longer view on this, you really see that it's not simply a religious issue, even though I referred to marriage as a sacred institution. But it's basically a matter that goes back to the nature of what human evolution means. And it goes back to the invention of sex. And that you need two partners to raise children. That's it. Why is there so much stupidity on this issue and so much blindness? Because we let it be cast in the form of a civil rights issue, and that was the original mistake.
Well, what do you think the feds are going to do, because they're going to weigh in on this?
Well, it's unfortunate that it's also become a federal issue, because it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what, they're looking at it now.
And anyway, states, if we stick to our Constitution, states still have a great deal of discretion, of independence and sovereignty.
Yes, yeah.
And so it may come down to, as other issues are coming down to, a state versus federal under the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But on the choice part, it is funny with some of the Democrats that I know, they do want all the choices. And they use choice. But then when it's a choice, for something stupid, Peter, wait until you hear this. We passed a bill. I voted against it. Anybody under 18 cannot go to a tanning salon. Currently, right now, it's 14 to 17. Mm-hmm. You have to have your parents' permission to go. If you're a girl, I imagine girls only go to them, but maybe guys do. If a girl wants to, at age 17, she cannot go to a tanning salon. But at 14, you can still have an abortion without your parents' knowledge. I don't understand that thinking. Or they want to take guns rights away and not allow a girl to have the choice to defend herself with a weapon or defend herself with a cell phone.
Well, nobody accused the legislature of consistency, but at least there ought to be some thinking across issues to get it straight.
Oh, yeah. But they, I just look at some of those and I just shake my head and, it just doesn't make any sense, especially on the tannin.
It's not just a matter of either, it's not also just not a matter of labeling, I mean, of pinning. It's a misuse of a term, marriage, which has so many levels of meaning.
Yeah. Now, where were you on the civil union part then?
On the civil union part, I say fine. We want to. There's where there was a civil rights issue, but the gay movement has come to be in such a position of power and wealth that they're now influencing politicians just through their money.
Yeah.
They've long since treated the values issue as one that they choose to sweep under the carpet.
Yeah.
If it's a matter of civil discrimination in the marketplace, sure, we've got laws to deal with that, and to the extent we don't, we'll pass a law. But that doesn't mean my gay friend. We all have gay friends.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't mean, my gay friends, that you should feel free to use the public government, the public legislature, the public sphere to honor your private preferences. Because that's another part of the issue where it's being miscast. The gay lobby is using the public sector to honor what are basically just private preferences. I don't give a damn what you do in the bedroom.
Yeah, no.
That's your business.
Yeah.
That is strictly private. But you don't have to impose your values through the public sector on my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got, many gay friends, and when it was brought up my first term, I was surprised because I called many of them and I said, what do you want to do on this issue? And a lot of them said, as long as we have civil union, they were happy.
Yeah. Those who had sense.
Well, two of my gay friends says, no, we want the gay marriage.
But now they've assumed such a position of power in the political arena, that there is a danger here that they will get their way, and I don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. It's going to be interesting to see what the federal government does on that side. And now, what are the essential issues and ongoing debates on abortion? Because that's always being brought up.
That's a good question, but I'm not well prepared to answer it. Here's this is one of the basic issues. Through Ron Paul and Rand Paul, especially the Campaign for Liberty. There's a bill. I can't remember the name, but there's a bill which the son and father, Paul, are strongly pushing through their conservative networks, and I'm part of the networks, that says that a life begins at conception. Now that is a fundamental issue. But I have to put it in perspective. When you have states arguing over whether they can at the state level, legislate that an abortion cannot happen past the age of 20 weeks, fetus.
Yeah.
They are really missing the point. And at the other extreme, you've got this push, and it is represented in a bill, perhaps you'll remind me what it is, that says that life begins at conception. Well, I feel strongly, this is a much more general issue here, let me quickly point to it. I strongly believe in evidence-based legislation. I'm not a believer in science as a religion, but I consider myself to be something of a scientist, because I think we got to rest, eventually everything has to rest on facts and evidence.
Yep, it does.
Now here we are on the abortion issue. Actually, I have not signed the Rand Paul's and Ron Paul's petition on this, not because I don't agree with them for the most part, but because there is scientific evidence that points to the fetus not being a human fetus until the end of the first week. But there's a hell of a difference between 1 week and 20 weeks.
Yes.
Now, if they were to reword the legislation to say that abortion is only permitted in the first week, I'd say, hurrah, go for it. But we're not even there yet.
So that's what the facts are showing, is that the first week is not.
It's not distinguishable as a human fetus until at least the first week.
Yeah.
That's what I read.
In the feds, now states cannot, which I guess I'm okay with it, because at this point, because, but the states can't make a ruling, right? The feds ruled this.
Well,
I mean,
the states got into this because a number of representatives and senators at the federal level passed the Defense of Marriage Act. And that was challenged by those who favor gay marriage, obviously. And the Supreme Court ruled on that. As far as I'm concerned, states simply have to do give a lot more thought and care to the wording of anything they do in this area, so that it won't be, it either cannot be challenged, or if challenged, it would not seriously be overturned by the Supreme Court.
Yes, yeah.
Just in light of what the Supreme Court decided in the Defense of Marriage Act. But states, I would still like to think that we're not in a European national system, where we have national governments which are not based on the great ideas that our United States of America is grounded on. I don't even want to go there.
Well,
because I think the federal system is so important, and that it's important that states have a lot of leeway here.
Well, but I think bottom line, Peter, I don't think I think back in the 70s and 60s when I grew up as a child, I think states could say, no, there's no abortion here, or yes, there's going to be abortion here. But states can't do that today. They can have restrictions of, 1 week or 6 weeks, or, I think within reason, or 20 weeks, whatever the number is. But I think it's mandatory from the feds that every state offers it.
Well, I think here again, you've got to deal with the language, and there's too much. What's happened at the Supreme Court, federal level, is that there's a lot more attention. It's not exactly the right attention. We should have given attention to this privacy issue, which figures at the issue of the overshoot of the NSA and collecting data on all of us. That's intrusion. But anyway, the privacy issue figures in here, and we have to do a better job of dealing with that.
Well, a Senate bill just passed, which I was surprised it came out of the Senate, but now it's heading to the House, that's going to mandate, I don't know how many abortion clinics we have in the state, but any protester has to be 25 feet away from the property line. And, I just think, if the person's on the sidewalk marching back and forth on a public sidewalk, they have the right to.
Yeah, I was standing out in front of a Planned Parenthood clinic in Manchester with some folks.
Yeah, well, now they're going to have to be across the road.
I know.
If this passes.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah. So,
unless people are clearly interfering with others.
And I guess they weren't. That
No,
the testimony
No,
wasn't.
we never did. And,
Yeah.
But unless they are, I mean, there should be, the First Amendment should rule.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And now, how do we turn the U.S. Congress into a citizens' legislature? Similar to what New Hampshire has, because what they are doing down there now is just, I just find it unbelievable. Bad.
Well, yeah, it is. I just gave you one example earlier of how, from day one, legislators are more concerned with running for re-election and raising the money, therefore, than they are in serving their constituents. And believe me, that's a time issue, because increasing amounts of time is spent raising big money.
Yep.
No question. It interferes with their legislative responsibilities and their responsibilities to constituents. Now, how do we get a citizens' Congress which in any way can be likened to the only citizens' legislature in the country, which we have here in New Hampshire?
Yes.
Well, I've written 3 books on variations of this theme, including this one, We the People. And the theme that I love is the first 3 words of the Constitution. It's the theme of all 3 books, which is We the People. How we the people can take back our government by getting involved and playing within any limited amount of time and money that any of us have. There's always limited time and always limited money for most of us. There are ways we can make a difference. And I point them out in here as book 1 in the series, and I've just recently finished and put up as an ebook for good reason, because it's a true electronic book with all kinds of hot links. So round out the book and give people additional entertainment and information. The Citizens' Congress, there are 2 things, to answer your question directly and get to the point. One is that we need a Congress which is far more representative of people. And I'm talking about representation at the congressional district level. People don't feel generally people don't feel they're well represented.
No, I don't.
And if they come to that point, then they have a throw the bums out attitude, and then you get a game of musical chairs played in Washington, which has some new faces and new labels in the offices, but nothing really changes, because the system has become so beholden to big money through the escalating cost of congressional campaigns, which is fed by the very existence of big money contributions, which has just been aggravated by the most recent Supreme Court decision in the McCutcheon case, which is preceded by Chicago United, which is preceded by the case against McCain-Feingold. So we got a real problem here of how are people going to take charge? What should, after all, be their politics and their government? Well, first of all, if you want a more representative system, you're going to have a representative who promises to vote the majority opinion of his district. Otherwise, he's not representing.
They all say they will, but they don't.
But they don't.
Yeah.
But that should be a hard and fast rule. The other is that you want a representative, and this applies at the state levels as well as the federal, who works to empower his constituents. Because unless you can show people there are ways that they can be involved to make a difference, especially with the rising importance of big money, they're just going to say, what the hell? Why should I bother?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you hear it all the time. And whenever I registered people to vote, and I wish we had voter registration, we could do it door to door like I used to do it. You knock on doors, you register who's not registered in the house. I never asked them how they were going to vote. I said, I just want you to have the right to vote.
Yep.
And anyway, sorry to pat myself on the back. I'll try not to break my arm doing that.
No, we need it.
Anyway, what do I mean by empowering your constituents? I mean, people need far better information. There's so much crap that comes out of the media and so much bias out of the media, and there's not enough really good information coming through the media. So if you just watch television, you're going to be dumbfounded.
Yes. Yep.
And with emphasis on the word dumb.
Yeah.
Okay. The other, and so information is one key. The other is that I recommend that anyone who's a legislator, and this really applies more at the federal level, because there you have at least each member of Congress gets at least $1 million to spend on office.
Oh,
So you have some real money, federal money, behind your office and your staff, and you can actually have people doing things they should be doing but they're not doing,
yeah.
which is helping people, organize people in issues committees in the district, to advise them, to collect information, give them their opinion, and advise the rep on issues. And that way, you have no need for lobbyists. 'Cause
Yeah.
the first thing they do whisper in the candidate's ear or the congressman's ear is, hey, you need some information on this issue, don't you, right? And then the next thing they wish you is, oh, we're going to raise some good money for you.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you want to get if you get involved citizens more, you have good sources of information in any congressional district who can advise any member of Congress, and you also can help them get involved in all kinds of political activities to suit themselves, to show how they can make a difference.
Yeah, well, that's what we need to do.
That's it, making a difference.
Well, we'll have to wrap it up here.
I'm
We're
sorry.
almost right to the end.
Did I was too long-winded?
No, we're right at the end, so I think we've done well.
You just got me going. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. And this is John Burt, and I want to thank you for watching us today. And I'm definitely going to have Peter back on, and it's Peter Bearse. And make sure you pick up his book, and it's "We the People" is one of them. And
by the latest one, very quickly, has a very simple main title. It's 1% plus 99% equals 100%.
yes,
And if we don't get that formula to work, we're going to have class warfare in this country.
we will.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, I'll see you next week. You have a good day now. Bye.
Thank you.